The map of a monarchy isn't just lines on a page, it's footsteps through rooms, the creak of certain staircases, the way a corridor smells in winter. Tonight that map is being redrawn in the soft green of Windsor, where gravel paths remember 1,000 private conversations and oak doors have learned the etiquette of secrets. What looks, on paper, like a simple domestic adjustment, the Prince and Princess of Wales trading the snug charm of Adelaide Cottage for the broader canvas of Forest Lodge within the same royal parkland, lands like a silent policy paper from the House of Windsor itself. And the heading is clear: the future lives here. Let's name the signal first. King Charles III hasn't just nodded this through, he's leaned into it. The endorsement is not an indulgence for a young family but a declaration that the operational pulse of the monarchy can, and perhaps should, beat outside the London postcode that has long claimed supremacy. Buckingham Palace will keep its balcony, its trumpets, its choreography of state, of course it will. But the daily weather of royal life, the school runs, the small meetings that make the big ones work, the thinking that happens when you can hear your own thoughts, is shifting to Berkshire. And that, whether you cheer or bristle, is a change with teeth. Why Windsor? Because it's not just a castle, it's a climate. It is St. George's Chapel inscribed with memory. It is the long walk drawing a straight line through centuries. It is the private lanes where a child can learn to ride a bike without becoming a headline, and the working yards where hedges are trimmed with the same care they bring to drafting a speech. It is also, intimately and inescapably, Elizabethan, not the Tudor kind, the kind whose handbag could hush a room. William has said it plainly enough that no spin doctor needed to translate. For him, Windsor is his grandmother. To raise 3 children here is to stitch them into a story that already fits. To work here is to hear the echo of a standard that was set long before press offices learned the language of algorithms. Forest Lodge is the practical heart of that choice. Adelaide Cottage served its purpose, a human-scale house that let a family exhale after years of being photographed on the way to the bins. But families grow and diaries expand. Forest Lodge answers the call for space not to multiply receptions, but to separate zones, a place where homework and briefing papers can coexist without colonizing each other, where staff can be near enough to matter and far enough to be invisible, where the Wales operation can be a proper organism instead of a backpack crammed with could you just. It is the difference between living around the job and living with it. Naturally, the traditionalists bristle. Isn't the Sovereign's Court a London court? Isn't Buckingham Palace the motherboard, the myth, the magnet? Yes, and also, not anymore in the way some imagine. The palace is a superb stage and a stubborn building site. Its refurb is not a cosmetic facelift but an infrastructural surgery designed to keep the place alive for the grandchildren of the people complaining now. The sovereign will ring its bell on state days, the balcony will hold its choreography like muscle memory. But a modern crown needs a place to think, not only a place to be seen. Windsor offers that without forcing the family into the performance of living inside a postcard. There's a philosophical edge to the move that deserves to be said aloud. Charles has spent a lifetime gardening real gardens and reputational ones. He prunes, he plans, he looks 3 seasons ahead. Backing Windsor as the working home base fits that temperament. It lowers the temperature without lowering the standard. It streamlines in a way that doesn't feel like shrinkage. It lets the sovereign keep London's megaphone and Berkshire's monastic calm. And it gives the heir a proper runway for the work he and Catherine do best: sustained, often unphotogenic projects, early years, mental health, homelessness prevention, veterans reintegration that thrive on rhythm, not spectacle. There is also the quiet genius of proximity. Forest Lodge tucks the Wales family into the same living ecosystem as the sovereign's favoured base, while preserving just enough distance for both households to breathe. When father and son need to walk and talk without microphones in the hedges, Windsor makes it easy. When the court circular needs to reflect momentum without motion sickness, Windsor's compact geography makes days more efficient. When the family needs to be a family, birthdays without balcony binoculars, tears without telephoto, Windsor restores the private in a life that is professionally public. Of course, the optics conversation refuses to die. There will be op-eds about retreat and privilege and who exactly is minding the shop in London. But look at the past few years honestly and you see the answer. The most consequential decisions were not made on a capital's pavement, they were made behind stout doors and then delivered to the world with minimal theatre. The monarchy doesn't need to live above a tourist queue to function, it needs to meet the country at eye level and deliver. A base that allows the heirs to be parents without apology, and principals without fatigue, is not indulgence. It is continuity by other means. And there's the practical arithmetic parents recognize instantly. Windsor's schools and routines offer a plausibly ordinary childhood under implausible conditions. George, Charlotte, and Louis can learn the social grammar of queuing for hot chocolate and scraping knees on real gravel while also learning the strange language of curtsies and state secrets. Friends can be friends, not future footnotes. A football match can be a football match, not a social media referendum on a coat. The future sovereign's empathy will be better for it. So will his reign. Listen closely and you can hear the institutional gears click into a new alignment. Engagements distributed with more sense, less commute. Teams that talk across a lawn instead of 3 congested postcodes. Meetings that begin with what's the outcome, instead of who's on the doorstep. When you peel away the romance, you reach the machine and this relocation oils it. The Wales brand is already built on outcomes rather than photo ops. A Windsor base lets that ethic scale. The line from brainstorming to pilot to national rollout shortens when the people who can greenlight share a postcode and a morning dog walk. What about Buckingham Palace as the shop window? It will gleam on cue. State visits, investitures, trooping. London will always provide the volume when the monarchy needs to sing at full throat. But between arias you need craft. You need rehearsal. You need to fix the lighting. Windsor is where that happens. And if you worry the public will feel shortchanged, remember this: the public did not fall in love with uniformed balconies, it fell in love with reliability. Show up when it matters, mean what you say, waste nobody's time. The rest is production design. There is, too, the matter of legacy. The late Queen's final years reset the emotional coordinates of the castle. She weathered a pandemic there with the stoicism of someone who had already learned what blitzes sound like at night. She chose it for her resting place and in so doing braided family, faith, and nation into one location in a way no comms plan could. For William, Windsor smells like her. For Catherine, it is where the family's pulse steadied in hard seasons. To anchor their own chapter there is not nostalgia, it is stewardship. It says, we remember what worked. We intend to keep it working. From an environmental lens, another of Charles's lifelong obsessions, the move carries its own logic. Fewer convoy miles, more consolidated working hubs, a setting where land management and sustainable practice are not magazine spreads but daily decisions. It is easier to preach about hedgerows and heat pumps when your office looks out on both. It is easier to convene farmers, scientists, and policymakers when they can stand in a field together rather than in a London conference room that smells of coffee and microphones. None of this denies the throb of London or its symbolic gravity. Nor does it exile Kensington Palace to irrelevance. Studios, showcases, launch pads, there will be rooms in the capital that continue to matter because they are near the levers you sometimes must pull. But the day-to-day will belong to the place that lets a family be efficiently human and visibly useful. If that feels unromantic, that's the point. Romance was yesterday's selling point. Competence is today's. So picture the calendar in 6 months. A Monday staff huddle under a Windsor sky that can't decide. Between drizzle and promise. A midweek school recital where a future king sits 3 rows back and claps at the right time. A Friday roundtable at Home Park with youth workers who can show results on a spreadsheet, not just hopes in a press release. The weekend walk to St. George's, where memory sits in the stone and resolve sits in the pew. Then a crisp train up to London when the nation requires the theatre it loves, the pictures it collects, the reassurance that ceremony still contains meaning. Back on Sunday night. Alarm set for 6:10. Repeat. If you want a single sentence that captures the logic, try this: Buckingham Palace projects, Windsor sustains. You need both to last. One without the other is either noise or silence. William and Catherine choosing Forest Lodge is not a snub to the capital but a vote for the kind of monarchy that survives scandals, outlasts social media tempests, and earns attention the slow way by doing things that stand up to a skeptical eye. Charles's blessing is not capitulation to modernity, it is craftsmanship. He is building them a workbench, not a throne. In the end, maps change because lives do. Children grow. Parents age. Institutions learn, or they don't. The car doors that close at Windsor each morning now contain not just a family, but a plan, less theatre where theatre isn't needed, more substance where substance makes a difference. The monarchy's heart has always been where its habits live. With this move, those habits relocate to a place that feels truer to the people living them, quieter, steadier, greener, closer to the memory that still teaches and the future that is learning to walk in sensible shoes. Is it radical? Only if you think common sense is. Is it reversible? Anything is, in theory. But look at the smiles that appear on the faces of the people whose job it is to make all this function, the schedulers, the security, the policy leads, the staff who have to turn initiative into impact, and you understand why this feels less like a detour and more like the road finally straightening. Windsor ascendant doesn't mean London diminished. It means the Crown admitting, out loud in the language of addresses, that the work is bigger than a balcony and better done where the air helps you breathe.